The prison corridor was quiet, almost eerily so. Steven Seagal walked with a calm, measured pace, his eyes scanning the common area ahead. Every step he took was deliberate, every movement precise. To anyone else he looked like just another inmate, but those who knew better. Suddenly, a massive figure stepped into his path. A bully, easily over 300 pounds, dressed in a worn leather jacket and scuffed boots, grinned menacingly. He had the confidence of someone used to intimidation, someone who thought size alone was power. "Where do you think you're going?" The bully sneered, his voice echoing off the cold concrete walls. Laughter bubbled up from the nearby inmates, some joining in, some merely watching, waiting to see what would happen. Steven stopped. Not aggressively, not hastily. He simply adjusted his stance, shifting his weight subtly, a calm yet unmistakable signal that he was aware, prepared, and unafraid. His eyes met the bully's, steady, piercing, unyielding. Whispers began to ripple through the corridor. Other inmates froze mid-step. Tension crackled in the air like electricity. Everyone could sense it. Something big was about to unfold. The bully laughed, assuming the silence meant fear, assuming his size would intimidate. But he had no idea what he was about to trigger. Have you ever seen someone challenge a legend, only to instantly regret it? In that brief moment, the corridor seemed smaller, the sounds of the prison dimmed, and all eyes were on the two men. The bully's confidence, once loud and brash, now carried a hint of doubt. And just like that, the stage was set. No one could have predicted what would happen in the next few seconds, a lesson in power, control, and respect that no one in that prison would ever forget. The common area was alive with the usual prison chaos. Inmates moved in clusters, some laughing, others arguing quietly. The clatter of metal from the gym echoed through the walls. Guards patrolled in slow loops, their eyes scanning, alert but unbothered. It was a world that seemed ordinary, even routine. But anyone who had spent time here knew the truth. Calm could shatter in an instant. Steven Seagal walked through the throng with measured steps, blending into the environment yet impossible to ignore. His clothes were simple, plain shirt, dark pants, but his presence carried a quiet authority. Heads turned subtly as he passed. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered to each other, curious and cautious. There was something about him that made the air shift, even when he said nothing. The bully from the corridor noticed him now. At first, he shrugged, dismissing Steven as just another inmate wandering through. He laughed to his friends, joking about how bored he was, and how he'd find someone to entertain himself with later. Overconfidence radiated from him like heat. He didn't see Steven as a threat, not yet. Around them, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Other inmates noticed the tension, subtle but unmistakable. Phones clicked. Eyes flicked toward the two men, even in this noisy environment. The sense that something significant was about to happen hung in the air, invisible but tangible. Steven moved deliberately, keeping his eyes forward but aware of every movement around him. His calm contrasted sharply with the chaotic energy of the room. The contrast was clear, one man fully in control, the other unaware of the storm approaching. Narration engagement. Sometimes danger hides in plain sight. What looks calm can explode in seconds. It was a delicate balance. In this world, one small provocation, a shove, a word, a smirk, could set off a chain reaction that no one could predict. The bully's ignorance of that fact only made the eventual confrontation inevitable. For now, though, the world continued as normal. Guards walked by. Inmates joked. Phones recorded snippets of everyday life. But underneath the noise, a tension simmered, a storm waiting to break, and all eyes, even if unconsciously, had already begun to follow Steven Seagal. The bully's laughter cut through the hum of the prison common area, sharp and loud. "Hey, look who we've got here!" he jeered, his voice carrying easily over the chatter. The old man thinks he can just stroll through like he owns the place. His friends joined in, slapping their knees and echoing the insult, their laughter bouncing off the concrete walls. Some inmates glanced nervously, unsure if anyone would intervene, or if the situation would explode at any second. Phones emerged recording, capturing the brewing conflict, every eye drawn to the scene. Steven Seagal didn't react immediately. He simply stopped, standing tall yet relaxed, his expression calm, controlled. His eyes scanned the bully from head to toe, noting posture, stance, and intent. There was no anger, no rush, no impulsive movement. Just awareness, experience, and readiness. The bully took a step closer, clearly encouraged by Steven's lack of reaction. He smirked, thinking his size and loud mouth had unsettled this old man. He leaned forward, taunting more aggressively. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little joke. Narration engagement. What would you do if someone crossed the line right in front of everyone? Other inmates shifted uneasily, sensing the tension spike. The air felt heavier, charged. Every eye followed the bully's every move in Stephen's measured stance. There was a momentary pause, a breath before a storm, one that most people would call inevitable. But Stephen didn't raise his voice. He didn't lunge. He simply held his ground, a silent signal that he was aware, prepared, and not intimidated. The bully, misreading the calm as weakness, escalated further. He stepped even closer, invading Stephen's personal space, leaning in, trying to provoke a reaction. The smirk on his face was cocky, overconfident, a mask for the unease that had just begun to creep in. It was the pivotal moment. Most stories would erupt here, fists flying, chaos erupting in seconds. But this wasn't most stories. Stephen's approach was different. He understood power was not measured in aggression but in control. Every move, every step, every second counted. The bully had no idea how badly he had miscalculated. Every person in the common area could feel it, the shift from casual disrespect to an invisible tension that demanded attention. And in that moment, the stage was set. What happened next wouldn't be about rage, noise, or chaos. It would be about precision, restraint, and the quiet authority of a man who had faced far worse and always prevailed. Stephen stood perfectly still for a moment, his eyes locked on the bully. The laughter and chatter around him seemed to fade into a dull background hum. Every instinct in his body told him that this moment could escalate in an instant. One wrong move from the bully, or from himself, and chaos would erupt. He considered his options. He could strike immediately, ending the threat in seconds. He could turn away, ignore the provocation and walk through, leaving the bully's arrogance unchallenged. Or he could assert control, not with brute force, but with calculated precision, showing dominance without losing his composure. He took a slow, deliberate breath. Years of discipline, years of experience in life, or death situations, whispered to him through every muscle, every nerve. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about proving he was stronger. It was about protection, respect, and control, the kind that didn't need violence to assert itself. He could end this in seconds, but this is about protection and respect, not ego. Stephen shifted slightly, adjusting his stance with care. Not aggressively, not provocatively, but deliberately, subtly positioning himself to shield, to be ready for anything. He allowed his presence to speak louder than words ever could. The bully, unaware of the depth of experience facing him, leaned in again, testing limits. Around them the room felt smaller, tighter. Inmates' glances darted back and forth. Some held their breath. Phones recorded the tension, capturing not chaos, but restraint in its purest form. Stephen's mind ran through possibilities. If he reacted too soon, it could escalate beyond control. Too late, and he might risk harm to himself or others nearby. Every choice had consequences. Every second mattered. Engagement. Sometimes the hardest thing is not reacting. Can you stay calm when provoked? He took another measured step, just enough to remind the bully that he was aware of every inch of space, every potential movement. The subtle power of control radiated from him. There was no threat in his voice, no anger in his eyes, only a steady, unyielding presence that made the air itself tense. In that moment, the audience realizes this is not just a physical confrontation. It's psychological. Every look, every posture, every breath is a test of dominance and discipline. The bully believes he's in control, but the truth is already shifting. Stephen has the advantage not through violence, but through awareness, restraint, and the quiet, unshakable authority of a man who has faced far worse and emerged unscathed. The stage is set. The bully is about to make the mistake of underestimating him, and the moment of reckoning is closer than anyone in the room realizes. The bully's smirk widened as he took another step closer. "What's the matter? Scared?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. Without warning, he shoved Stephen lightly in the shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to test a reaction. Laughter erupted from his friends, filling the common area with a false sense of security. Stephen didn't flinch. He didn't lash out. Instead, he stepped back strategically, creating space while keeping his stance firm. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost choreographed, designed not to escalate the situation, but to maintain control. The subtle shift of weight, the angle of his shoulders, the calm in his eyes, all spoke louder than any words ever could. Inmates around them froze mid-action. Phones came out to capture the moment. Some murmured nervously to each other. Others simply held their breath, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Every gesture, every twitch of muscle, Every tiny expression was magnified in the room's tense atmosphere. The bully, misreading the calm as hesitation, leaned in further. "Simon, old man."
"Show me what you got?"
He sneered, raising his voice to ensure everyone could hear. He shoved again, a little harder this time. The sound echoed off the concrete walls, a metallic thud that punctuated the tension. Narration engagement. "If this were you, would you intervene or freeze?" Stephen didn't retaliate immediately. Instead, his eyes locked onto the bully's, steady and unwavering. He observed the slight shift in the bully's balance, the overconfidence that made him predictable. Each movement from the bully created openings, and Stephen calculated them with the precision of a man trained for moments just like this. Then the bully's arrogance peaked. He stepped so close that their shoulders nearly touched, trying to intimidate with sheer presence. His friends laughed, some cheering him on, assuming the fight was inevitable. But they didn't notice the subtle change in Stephen's posture, the tiny adjustment of feet, the shift of weight, the controlled positioning of his hands. In one smooth, deliberate motion, Stephen redirected the bully's push. Not with force, not with rage, but with precise leverage. The bully stumbled slightly, caught off guard by the quiet authority that opposed him. He had expected chaos, confrontation, a brawl, but instead he met control, and it unsettled him far more than violence ever could. The room held its breath. The bully's friends hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. The subtle psychological shift was palpable. The man they thought was vulnerable had already claimed dominance. Every nervous glance, every faltering step from the bully, reinforced the reality this wasn't about strength in fists. It was about strength and control. By the end of the confrontation, the bully's bravado began to crack. Laughter faded, replaced with uncertainty. Stephen didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply held his ground, calm and unshaken, demonstrating that real power wasn't in aggression. It was in mastery of oneself and the situation. The tension in the room was absolute. Every inmate, every guard, every observer knew that the moment had shifted. What looked like a challenge on the surface had become a lesson in discipline, control, and authority. And in that precise, quiet moment, Stephen Seagal had turned the table without a single punch thrown. The bully had pushed too far. His smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second, the first hint that his arrogance might have been misplaced. Stephen Seagal didn't shout. He didn't lunge. Instead, he took a measured step, shifting his weight with a quiet fluidity that seemed almost imperceptible. Every movement was deliberate, his feet planted with purpose, his knees slightly bent, shoulders aligned, ready for any attack, yet presenting no aggression. The bully lunged again, attempting another shove, expecting chaos, expecting fear, but Stephen simply redirected the force. With a subtle twist of his wrist and a shift of his shoulder, the bully's momentum carried him slightly off balance. Not enough to cause pain, not enough to humiliate, but enough to send a clear message that control was not optional here. The sound of heavy boots skidding across the concrete floor echoed, but it was drowned by the gasps of the watching inmates. Phones were raised, not to record violence, but to capture an extraordinary display of calm authority. The room, once buzzing with noise, had fallen into a silence so complete it felt almost sacred. Stephen's eyes never left the bully. Every twitch of muscle, every micro-movement was observed. When the bully attempted to raise a hand in anger, Stephen intercepted it with precise leverage, redirecting the arm and using the bully's own force against him. A subtle step to the side, a shift of the torso, and suddenly the giant man was off balance, his grin gone, replaced with disbelief. Narration engagement. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's invisible, until it's undeniable. The bully's friends, emboldened by years of witnessing others submit, moved forward to intervene. Two of them reached for Stephen simultaneously, thinking sheer numbers could intimidate. They underestimated him. In one fluid motion, Stephen positioned himself between them, guiding each step they took, redirecting their aggression without a single punch. Each movement was controlled, calculated, leaving no room for escalation. Inmates leaned in, eyes wide, some whispered quietly to each other. No one had seen power demonstrated in such a quiet, precise manner. The bully staggered, confused and humbled, unable to comprehend how someone of Stephen's age and stature could neutralize his intimidation so completely, without ever striking a true blow. Stephen's calm presence radiated authority. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need weapons. His control over the situation was total. Every shove, every attempt at dominance from the bully or his friends was met with subtle adjustments, redirections, and leverage that left them off balance both physically and mentally. Time seemed to slow. The air was thick with tension and awe. The bully's friends paused, finally realizing that this was not a fight they could win. Not through brute strength, not through intimidation. The lesson was clear: power without control is meaningless. Control without unnecessary force is undeniable. And just like that, the moment passed. The bully, unhurt but humbled, sank back slightly, the arrogance draining from his expression. His friends stepped back, wary, unsure what to do next. Stephen remained steady, breathing even, his gaze calm yet unmistakably commanding. In that corridor, in that common area, the lesson was witnessed by everyone present: dominance isn't an aggression. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned through restraint, precision, and an unwavering presence that cannot be shaken. And in that single tense climax, Stephen Seagal proved exactly why he had survived and commanded respect in far more dangerous arenas than this prison hallway. The bully's friends finally intervened, guiding him away from Stephen with tight grips on his arms. He walked back quiet, his earlier arrogance stripped away. The bravado that had filled the corridor only moments before was gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he had underestimated a man who wielded authority far beyond physical strength. Stephen watched, his eyes calm but alert, ensuring the bully and his companions retreated fully without incident. He scanned the room, checking that no other inmates were in danger, that no sudden moves would trigger further conflict. Every motion, every glance was measured, deliberate. His presence alone maintained order without a single raised voice. The guards arrived shortly after, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. They assessed the situation quickly, expecting to see chaos, bruises, threats, or a full-scale fight. Instead, they found calm. No one was hurt. No one was out of control. The tension remained, but it was the quiet kind, the kind that speaks of respect earned and discipline maintained. Narration engagement. This is what real strength looks like. Not in fists, not in fear, but in control. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest, the biggest, or the most aggressive. It's the one who protects without losing themselves. Stephen turned his attention to the inmates nearby. Some looked at him with awe, others with relief. Phones were still recording, capturing not a violent fight, but a masterclass in restraint and authority. The ripple effect was immediate. Whispers of respect traveled down the rows of inmates. The story of what had just happened would spread fast, not because of chaos, but because of control. The bully, once confident and mocking, now walked with lowered eyes, his friends trailing silently behind. The corridor's atmosphere had shifted completely. What had started as an attempt at dominance had ended as a lesson in discipline and composure. No force had been needed. No one had been hurt. Yet respect had been earned and authority clearly demonstrated. Stephen stepped back, breathing steady, giving space for the guards and other inmates to regain normalcy. He nodded subtly to those around him, a small acknowledgement of the silent lessons witnessed. His gaze softened slightly as he observed the changed expressions of those who had been tense moments ago. Narration engagement. True strength is protecting without losing control. Discipline beats rage every time. By the next morning, the story had traveled through the prison. It wasn't shared for shock or spectacle. It was shared because of the lesson it contained, because it reminded people that power is most impressive when it is quiet, precise, and controlled. The video of the moment circulated, a subtle but powerful testament to what restraint and authority could achieve. What part impressed you most? Comment below. Who do you know that could use this lesson? More powerful stories are coming, and we want to hear which moments inspired you the most. The corridor returned to its usual rhythm, but something intangible had shifted. Inmates moved with a little more respect, guards with slightly more ease, and everyone who had witnessed the moment carried with them the unmistakable understanding that strength was not measured by aggression. It was measured by control, by the ability to protect without succumbing to impulse, and by the courage to face danger calmly and deliberately. In the end, it wasn't about winning a fight. It was about showing that a true legend doesn't need to raise his hand to command respect. The quiet authority, the discipline, the unwavering composure, these were the qualities that turned intimidation into a lesson and fear into admiration. And that night, the lesson was clear. The strongest person in the room is not the one who makes the most noise, it's the one who maintains control when it matters most.